Hi, I'm Elliot Hawthorne. 32, CO. Alleged dropout. Black sheep. And apparently, the villain of every family dinner. Last winter, I showed up for Christmas with nothing but a pie and a prayer. But instead of Merry Christmas, my dad looked me dead in the eye and said, "Didn't know they let dropouts in here." That was the moment I knew, this year, I wasn't just bringing dessert. I was bringing receipts. Let's begin. The moment I stepped inside my sister Kara's house, snow still clinging to my boots, I knew I'd made a mistake. My dad's voice, already half-drenched in whiskey, greeted me with, "Didn't know they let dropouts in here." And just like that, the warmth of the house turned to frost. Laughter rippled around the table. The kind that's more about permission than punchlines. Like they'd all agreed years ago that I was the family's designated punch bag. I said nothing. Just nodded, took off my coat, and found the coldest seat in the room, near the window, far from the carved turkey and even farther from the warmth I never expected to find here. I hadn't planned on staying long. 1 hour, max, eat some stuffing, pretend to laugh, then disappear like I always did. But this time felt different. Kara had called me herself to invite me. Said she missed me. Said Dad was trying. That one got a dry laugh out of me. But I came anyway. The house smelled like cinnamon and fragile hope. Beige and gold everything. The kind of setup that screamed, "We only use this for company." It was all choreographed, polished forks, kids on tablets, cousins bragging about promotions. No one asked me what I'd been up to. Which was fine. Really. Then came Uncle Ron. With his infamous career check-in. A holiday tradition that landed like a punchline with consequences. Everyone went around the table, boasting their resumes like it was a LinkedIn convention. I was last. Kara tried to skip me. Uncle Ron didn't let her. "What about Elliot?" he said, like a man tossing a bone into a bear cave. I looked up, deadpan. "Still chasing the dream." Chuckles. Dad smirked. Then came Matt, Kara's husband. Nice guy. Corporate. We'd barely spoken. He leaned over casually and asked, "Where do you work again?" And right there, in that room full of people who'd written me off as a dropout, a failure, a punchline, I told the truth. I said the name of my company. Matt's face twisted. "Wait. You're my CO?" You could hear a fork hit the carpet. And that was just the beginning. Matt looked like someone had just told him Santa was real, and that I owned the North Pole. "You're Elliot Hawthorne?" he asked, louder this time. "That Elliot Hawthorne?" Everyone turned. My mother stopped mid-toast. My cousin Ben's wife actually gasped. Even the kids, glued to their tablets just moments earlier, looked up like someone hit pause on reality. I took a sip of wine. Small world. Matt was blinking rapidly, clearly buffering. "But I've seen you in all-hands meetings. I thought you were just one of those founders who disappeared after the IPO." "Nope. Still here. Still running things." It was like I dropped a grenade on the dinner table and then politely dabbed my mouth with a napkin. Dad was the first to recover, sort of. He laughed, but it was that brittle, wheezy sound he made when someone else's success made him itch. "So what? You own a tech company. Doesn't mean you actually do anything. These days, anyone with a laptop calls themselves a CEO." There it was. The deflection. The same playbook he'd always used: diminish, dismiss, derail. Classic Harold. "I started it in my dorm," I said, voice calm. "We went public last year." Mom finally spoke. "Well, you certainly never brought it up before. You let everyone assume." "Assume what?" I asked. "That I was a burnout. That I failed?" Silence. "I never corrected anyone because none of you ever asked. You decided who I was years ago and didn't care to update the story." It got real quiet, real fast. Dad sat his fork down with that little clink that always meant things were about to get personal. "Don't get dramatic. You quit school. You stopped calling. You didn't want to be part of this family." "No," I said, locking eyes with him. "I just got tired of being treated like a joke. Like my path didn't count because it wasn't yours." Across the table, Kara looked down into her lap. A few aunts exchanged awkward glances. One of my cousins actually giggled, a nervous twitch, like her body couldn't decide if we were at a dinner or a courtroom. Then Uncle Ron tried to cut the tension with a chuckle and said, "Well, hey, maybe now you can buy us all a vacation, huh? Since you're a big shot." Laughter. Nervous. Desperate. A wave of it, trying to smooth over the wreckage. "I could," I said. "But I won't." And just like that, every eye snapped back to me. I'm not here to impress anyone. I came because Kara asked me to. But if all you're going to do is pretend this isn't a pattern, I'll save you the trouble next year. Dad scoffed, already winding up for the next jab. There he goes. Always so sensitive. But this time, someone else spoke up. Matt. Still holding his phone. Face pale. Voice clear. "Actually," he said, "I've got something to say." And the room, the room, went still all over again. "I've been working under Elliot's company for 3 years," Matt said, his voice surprisingly steady. "And I need you all to know something." Every fork paused midair. Even the toddler in the high chair next to the kitchen door stopped banging his spoon like he sensed a plot twist brewing. He built that company from scratch. During the pandemic, my division was on the chopping block. Layoffs were coming. You know who personally intervened so no one on my team lost their job? Him. Matt pointed at me. I stared down at the table, half wishing I'd just faked food poisoning and bailed earlier. "I didn't even know it was him back then," Matt continued, his voice thick with something real. "But now that I do, I think this might be the first time I've seen someone hide their success because of how their family would react." He turned to Kara. "Babe, how did you not know?" Kara blinked fast. "He never talks about work. I thought he just did freelance stuff." "I don't know. Consulting, maybe?" That stung. Not because she was wrong, but because she wasn't. I'd kept it vague. Always. Out of habit. Out of fear of that sigh mom gives when she thinks you're trying to sound important. "I didn't talk about it," I said, quieter now. "Because every time I brought up something I was proud of, it turned into a punchline. Or a lecture. Or a joke gift wrapped in red foil that told me I should start over." Mom opened her mouth to respond, but I raised a hand. "Don't. Just don't." Dad wasn't having it. "You think we're the problem? You've always thought you were better than us." "No," I said. "I hoped you'd be proud." But eventually, I realized that wasn't gonna happen. I stood. Not in a dramatic sweep the table kind of way. "Just done. I've worked hard," I said. "Really hard. But it's never been enough for this family. I could cure cancer, and you'd still say I should have finished college." And then, like the universe needed to underscore the point, Kara's voice broke in behind me. "Wait." I turned. She was holding something behind her back. A small box. Wrapped in shiny gold paper. "I was going to give this to you after dessert," she said softly. "It's from everyone." I took it. I shouldn't have opened it. I knew I shouldn't. But I did. Inside? A book. Finding Success After Failure. Subtitle: How to Rebuild When You've Hit Rock Bottom. I stared at it. Then at her. "You all picked this out together?" She hesitated. "It was Dad's idea. He thought it might help, you know. Get back on track." Matt looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. I didn't throw the book. I didn't scream. I just set it down on the table. "I'm not shrinking myself so you can feel comfortable." Then I turned to Kara. "Thanks for the invite. But I think I've stayed long enough." And as I walked out, I heard Dad mutter behind me. "See? Can't even take a joke." That was the moment it happened. The shift. The fracture. The start of everything that came next. When the doors shut behind me, it wasn't triumph I felt. It was quiet. It was cold. It was clarity. I sat in my car for a while, engine running, windshield fogging. My fingers on the steering wheel, unmoving, like I was trying to figure out if I'd just detonated the family or finally escaped it. You'd think walking away from a house full of people who never saw you would feel like freedom. But it felt more like walking out of a burning building and realizing you left a few parts of yourself inside. Back at my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I paced. I scrolled. I stared at the stupid book they gave me, still wrapped in that smug little ribbon. I almost laughed. Almost. Finding success after failure. A joke, but not the funny kind. The kind of joke that bruises. At some point near dawn, I dug out an old drawer, stuffed with rejection letters, old notebooks, bank statements, the flotsam of early ambition. And buried near the back was something I hadn't seen in over a decade. A letter. Folded into quarters. It was from my freshman year professor. A reply to the email I'd sent after dropping out, the one where I apologized for wasting his time. I told him I wasn't cut out for school. That I'd never be what he thought I could be. His response had been short. Elliot, you're not a failure. You just outgrew the room. It's scary. But that's not the same as quitting. Keep building. The rest will catch up eventually. I read it 5 times in a row. On the 6th, something clicked. He'd been right. I hadn't failed. I'd evolved. My family didn't want evolution. They wanted comfort. Predictability. A version of success they could understand. A framed degree on a beige wall. A mortgage. A life that looked like theirs. And I had skipped all of it. I didn't go back to work that week. Not fully. I still checked in with my execs. I took the necessary calls. But something inside me was changing. I stopped trying to prove anything. I stopped wearing my title like armor. I stopped correcting people who thought I was still figuring it out. I wasn't spiraling. I was shedding. I started walking more. Reading more. I found a dusty old typewriter at a thrift store and bought it for no reason other than the sound it made. I started journaling again. Not performatively, but messily. And slowly, the noise in my head began to quiet. I started mentoring. Just a couple of scrappy, bright-eyed kids who reminded me of myself. One of them, Jordan, 19, maybe 20, had this clunky mobile app, barely functional, but honest. I helped him polish his pitch. Introduced him to 2 angels in my circle. He closed his first round 2 weeks later. Watching him win? Felt better than any keynote I'd ever delivered. That's when I realized something else. I didn't want to just succeed. I wanted to redefine what success meant. It wasn't about revenue. It was about legacy. Not just the company, but the story. The one I had kept buried for way too long. And as for my family? Silence. No calls. No texts. Just one message from Kara in mid-January. Hope you're okay. I didn't respond. Not because I was mad. But because I was done. Done being the only one doing the emotional work. Then, in February, it arrived. A certified letter. From their lawyer. My parents were selling the house. They wanted to offer it to me first, at a family discount, before they listed it on the market. And that's when I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so them. The letter was wrapped in polite legalese, but the subtext was screaming. After ignoring me for months, after mocking me at dinner and gift-wrapping a book titled How to Bounce Back from Failure, their first real contact was a sales pitch. They wanted to sell me their house. A generous family rate, it said. I set the letter down. Opened the drawer again. Slid it next to the other relics. The bank statement from the month I hit 7 figures, the college rejection letters, that photo of me at 16 in a wrinkled shirt, while my dad grinned behind Kara like she was the chosen one. I stared at the drawer for a while. No anger left. Just precision. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted relief. From me. I started digging. And when you own a tech company that specializes in financial software, you learn things quickly. Not illegally, mind you. Just connections. Data. Public filings. Patterns. It took 2 phone calls to paint the full picture. Turns out Dad's hard-earned retirement had taken a nosedive in the last market dip. And 2 years ago, he'd refinanced the house to invest in, get this, a crypto startup run by some guy named Lance. A man who wore frosted tips and a Shopify hoodie in every LinkedIn photo. Lance had, predictably, vanished. And now? The house was circling the drain. They were trying to sell it before the bank came knocking. Their certified letter wasn't about legacy or nostalgia. It was about avoiding foreclosure and skipping realtor fees. That's when I knew I wasn't just going to decline their offer. I was going to rewrite the story. I made a list. Not a revenge list. A rebalancing. Step 1: buy the house, but not from them. I reached out to a VP of lending I'd met years ago at a fintech summit in Austin. The house was already flagged internally for pre-foreclosure. I made an offer. All cash. Quiet. Through a shell company I'd set up years ago for real estate investments. On paper, it was just another LLC buying property. No trace of the Hawthorne name. The bank? Delighted. Closed 20% below market. Step 2: wait. I didn't kick them out. That would have been obvious. I let them believe they had time. That they'd dodged a bullet. That they were in control. Meanwhile, I hired a property manager. Someone from outside my usual circle. A quiet professional with a firm tone and a clean business card. Her instructions were simple: don't rush. Just notify. Let them know the house had been sold and the lease would eventually end. When the letter arrived a month later, Mom called Kara in a panic. Kara texted me. Did you buy the house? I ignored it. Next day. They think you did. You didn't, right? I still didn't respond. Not to be cruel. To let them feel it. The uncertainty. The silence. Let them wonder what it's like to be left out of the loop. Let them sit in the ambiguity. That wasn't revenge. That was symmetry. Step 3: watch Matt. Turns out, he'd left the company shortly after the Christmas dinner. Landed at a startup competitor, underfunded, barely profitable. He'd listed himself as an executive strategist in his new role. Interesting. He'd used my company's name like it was a trampoline, no mention that he was 2 rungs below middle management. I didn't interfere. Yet. But I filed it away. Because this wasn't just about him. It was about the system that made room for him while keeping me out. Step 4: reintroduce myself. I started showing up again. Conferences. Panels. Podcasts. Not as Tech CEO Elliot Hawthorne, but as Elliot Hawthorne, dropout turned founder who rewrote his own metric for success. I talked about growing up in a family that measured worth by degrees and job titles. About being written off before the ink was dry. About rebuilding not just a company, but a life, without their approval. The response? Overwhelming. One keynote led to a podcast. The podcast led to a feature. A South by Southwest panel. Then a Forbes article. The headline? The dropout who didn't just succeed, he redefined winning. I knew they saw it. I saw the digital breadcrumb trail. Kara's college friend followed me. A cousin liked the photo from my keynote. Dad's LinkedIn profile showed up under. Who's viewed your profile? He never connected. Of course not. That would be acknowledging. Let them lurk. Let them learn. Because the next move was going to be mine. Late March, Kara texted again. Dad's turning 65 in April. He wants a small dinner. Just family. No drama. He asked me to invite you. I stared at it for a minute. Then another. There it was, the moment. The opening. The re-entry. I waited a few hours before replying. Me? Sure. Let me know when and where. No emojis. No sarcasm. Just enough to let her feel safe. Let them think the storm had passed. But behind the scenes, I was setting the stage for the finale. The dinner was booked at a quiet steakhouse downtown. White tablecloths. Soft jazz. The kind of place you go to impress clients or retire your last name. Private room. 12 seats. The same number of people who'd been at the table when they handed me that book at Christmas. I arrived 5 minutes early. On purpose. There's power in being early, especially when they used to act like you were lucky just to be invited. Navy blazer. No tie. Tailored enough to say, I've arrived, without screaming. Look at me. Fresh cut. Clean shave. And a new watch on my wrist, custom engraved. You built this. Didn't expect anyone to notice. That wasn't the point. Kara came in next. Her hug was awkward, like she wasn't sure if I'd hug back or call security. Thanks for coming, she whispered. I just nodded. Wouldn't miss it. Then the trickle started. Mom arrived with her practiced smile, already on glass number 1. Uncle Ron, still chuckling about nothing. Ben and his wife. The usual suspects. Dad came in last, of course. Swagger intact. He greeted everyone, until he got to me. "Glad you could make it," he said, like a man reading from a hostage script. "I'm glad, too," I said. "Happy birthday." Dinner began civilly. Bread baskets passed. Wine poured. Small talk floated around the room like helium. Netflix shows, traffic, a cousin's toddler's new words. I stayed quiet. Let them play pretend. Then Matt arrived, late. Sweaty. Uncomfortable. He nodded at me, barely. Sat beside Kara, eyes fixed on his napkin. The waiter came. Orders taken. Steaks cut. And finally, right when the filet mignons hit the table, Kara stood. "Before we dig in too much," she said, raising her glass, "I just want to make a quick toast. Dad, 65 years. We love you. Here's to fishing, rest, and whatever this next chapter brings. Cheers." Laughter. Clinks. Then Dad stood. "Thanks, everyone," he said. "Really. I wasn't sure we'd all be able to do this again, but I'm glad we did. Means a lot to have you here. Especially you, Elliot." Every head turned toward me. "I know things haven't always been perfect," he said. "But I've always wanted the best for you. Even if I didn't always say it the right way." Mom squeezed his hand like that single sentence was a Lifetime Achievement Award. I gave a small nod. "Appreciate that." People clapped. Small, polite. The kind of applause you give when you're hoping it's finally over. But it wasn't. Because dessert hadn't come yet. And I was saving mine for last. Dessert came with candles. Chocolate cake. 65. Flickering on top. Polite singing. A few photos snapped. Everyone looked ready to coast into goodbyes. That's when I stood up. Glass in hand. Calm. No shaking. No rage. "Before we head out," I said, "I'd like to share something. Quick announcement." Chairs shuffled. Eyes shifted. I held their attention. Most of you know I've been running my company for a while now. But recently I've been investing in something new: real estate. Community projects. Legacy properties. Pause. One of those came up for sale recently. Meant a lot to me. So I bought it. I turned toward Dad. "It was yours." The room froze. "I didn't buy it from you. I bought it from the bank. Pre-foreclosure. Turns out, Crypto Lance wasn't your golden ticket." Dad's face strained. Mom's fork slipped from her fingers. "I've let you stay there, rent-free for months. Covered utilities. Said nothing. But your lease is ending." "What are you saying?" Dad's voice was low. "You'll get 60 days notice this week. After that, it becomes a startup incubator. For kids who never got a head start, but never stopped building anyway." "You're evicting us?" Mom whispered. "I'm reclaiming something you weaponized for years. That house wasn't just a building. It was where you decided I'd never be enough." Dead silence. "You could have believed in me," I said. "At any point. But instead, you handed me a book about failure. So I'm handing you the keys. Out." Dad stood, shaking. "You think this makes you better than us?" "No," I said. "It makes me done." I turned to Kara, slid an envelope across the table. "A scholarship fund. For your kids. Full tuition, no strings. Because you tried. And that still matters." She stared, eyes wet. Matt couldn't even look at me. I placed a second envelope in front of him. A job offer. Clean slate. Better company. No nepotism required. He swallowed hard, nodded once. And just like that I walked out. No drama. No applause. Just peace. Not a dropout. Not the black sheep. I was the legacy now. And I was finally writing my own ending.